With our planning commission meeting. Start with a roll call.
Chairperson Evans,
Here.
Vice Chair Lynn, Secretary Lynn, Member Wickenheiser,
Here.
Member Kress Hartman,
Here.
Member LeClaire.
Here.
And I will note that the Lynns did contact us prior to the meeting. There is a personal issue, so unfortunately cannot make the meeting tonight. Okay, so we'll move on to our moment of silence and then pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks for everyone show up. It's good to have folks interested in planning. Also want to welcome our friends from DCD who are helping us with a project related to the zoning ordinance, trying to simplify it, making it more user-friendly for the borough and the citizens and landowners. They have a program for us, but we are going to take on, number 8 and move right into conversation about a proposed ordinance from council about changes in where data centers are permitted within the borough of Columbia. So we want to do our job as a review body of such land use matters. Hopefully we can do so where everyone can present their opinions and facts or whatnot and what the intent of the ordinance is, but also try to be efficient if all possible, just so we can conduct the other business. But this is very important to the community, so I'm not saying it's a rush situation. So I'll just go ahead and start by saying that we, as the Planning Commission, a review body of the borough of such land use matters, the zoning ordinance, minutes?
No, minutes.
Okay. All right. Let's do the minutes and then let's get into the business.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes of
All
June
right.
16th as presented in our packet.
Okay. Motion by Mary,
I'll second.
second by Deb. Thank you for the reminder. Any comments? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Okay. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Got cart ahead of the horse, but important stuff for our meeting, which is somewhat uncommon, I should say.
Yes.
So we were forwarded a proposed ordinance from council that would amend the zoning ordinance, specifically the table of permitted uses in regard to the data center land use. Currently, it is a permitted use, a permitted by right use in the light business, as well as the light industrial and general industrial districts. The proposed ordinance would change this so that it is not permitted in the light business district, and then change from being a permitted by right use in the light industrial, general industrial districts to a conditional use, which is a use that's permitted through a hearing before the Borough Council. So there's anyone, we have council members who can provide some context.
Would you care to put this on the floor as a motion in one way or the other?
Okay.
And then we would open it to any comments from those in attendance. And at this point, I would motion to approve the ordinance as submitted, changing light business data centers to a non-permitted use and as a conditional use in the light industrial, general industrial zoning district.
Okay. Mary, you have a motion, which would be to recommend the adoption of the ordinance by Borough Council as presented. We'll take a second for that motion, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Yes. We need a second for that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second for recommendation of approval of the ordinances as presented, but we will now open it up for discussion. I guess, if the Planning Commission members want to have comments first and then open it up to the floor.
I feel this is a move that needs to be made, that the adoption of the proposed data center ordinance is something that's going to take a bit of time. This is on, it's in. It's right in my face now. Okay. This is something that I feel when we did the ordinance with regard to the light business, I know I had no concept of the impact of data centers. And since then, a lot has come out. And that light business district is totally surrounded by residential zoned properties. And by doing this, you would be still making data centers a use within the borough, which we need to do. We can't just say we don't want it. And making them even a conditional use, what I was told is that someone who would want to put a data center even in the LI and GI, a conditional use hearing is held before council. It is not held before the zoning hearing board. So anyone requesting that use in even those areas would have to come before council to get approval. Excuse me? Light industrial and general industrial. I'm sorry. And at this point, the amount of time that's going to take for both council to put a data center ordinance together, for us as the local planning commission to review and make any recommendation, and for Lancaster County Planning Commission to review, is going to be timely. I think even at this point with Lancaster County Planning, to send something to them now, it would be September. We've passed that timeline for cutoff for things to go. So you're looking at a long period, an extended period of time for a data center ordinance to even be back to council for any kind of action. And this kind of, anyone interested in the light business property, this is kind of telling them right now, it's not going to cut it out there. And that would be one reason. I think I've laid out the reasons that I support this change, which is basically a change in the table of permitted uses within the zoning ordinance for the borough of Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, my comment echoes Mary's. Especially the latter half, which is the importance of adopting the standards, especially in regard to something that would go before council for a hearing, that there be standards that an applicant would have to meet. And obviously, the borough is working on that, but that is something that is very important. Granted that this amendment would scale back where as well as the process, or make it add that extra step with the conditional use. So there is a little bit of that in favor, but the criteria and the standards and the certain things that can help protect residential areas and look into require things that would address all the important topics: electricity, water usage, things of that nature. At least having those codified will require an applicant to bring that to the public, to bring that to council. So that is obviously very important, as well as a change to where it is to be located. So agree with Mary there. Okay. We'll go ahead and open it up to the floor. We have council members here if they wanted to speak specifically, or any members of the public.
Hi, my name is Todd Alshouse. I'm a Columbia resident. I'm at 657 Chestnut Street. Try to keep it brief because it seems like you guys are all have a strong grasp on this. But sorry, bit of background. I am the head of procurement for an MSP, which is just a long-winded way of saying that I am part of running a company that builds data centers and manages IT for businesses. So I have firsthand experience with the wide range of facilities that we call a quote unquote data center. And I think that ambiguity has been used by a lot of people to push projects on areas that, if they knew the actual scope of the project, would not be okay with it. Because when I say my company builds data centers, I mean we build the traditional sense of a data center, which is a small, maybe 2 or 3 racks of switching equipment and a fiber optic connector. They're small, they're unobtrusive, they're quiet. And proponents of AI centers will point to that completely different type of project and say, well, that's a data center and it's unobtrusive. And sort of use that as, in my view, a very dishonest way of getting AI centers into the light business where they really don't fit or belong. Because a large language model processing facility truly is industrial in every sense of the word. It's industrial in its scope, it's industrial in its resource usage, it's industrial in its impact in the environment. Like it slots into a community in a very similar way that a large manufacturing plant slots into a community, which is to say not well. It's very obtrusive. You notice it. It has a very, very immediate impact on the area it goes into. What would be more appropriate for light business are those old school style of, telecommunications hubs or even web hosting. And so because we don't have good language to differentiate between web hosting and AI, unfortunately, we kind of just have to make our zoning ordinances and our decisions on stuff like this, assuming that if somebody says data center, they mean this specific type of data center. Because this is an industrial use. And sure, that stinks for somebody who wants to come in and build a telecoms facility or a web hosting facility, but quite frankly, at least at the moment, those aren't getting built. The market is very saturated on web hosting. So anybody who would be looking to build web hosting simply isn't. There's no money in it right now. So we can rest assured that anybody who says, hey, I'm building a data center, they're building an AI facility. Telecoms facilities, by their very nature, don't actually need to be all that close to the population hubs that they serve. So the idea that we would need another, we already have one in Columbia, actually. It's tiny, it's unobtrusive, you'd never notice. And that's one of the, people will point to that and go, oh, see, we already have a data center. We have a 400 square foot room with 4 switches. It's not the same thing. And that's great. And I love that we can have that here, but also that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about data centers. And I think you guys properly understand that. So I'm going to stop wasting your time. But it's important to understand the scope and just the different nature. I mean, we're talking about racks and racks and racks of GPUs running at full tilt constantly, 24/7, which need very intense cooling versus passively cooled network switches. It's just not the same world. It's a completely different technology. It's a completely different use case. It's a completely different approach to earning money. And the one we are talking about is in every way industrial. So I think it is appropriate to change, make that change.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
So a good takeaway there plays into the, the ordinance that would create standards, which is it needs to make sure it addresses the impacts from scale and intensity, right? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Heather. What's that?
Just wanted to let you guys know, as one of the legislative leads for council, I have pretty much the proposed ordinance done. I'm pretty happy with it. Last week, I got some new examples from West Donegal Township. They actually used Penn Township's, which was written by Joselle.
Right.
And I always thought she did a good job on legislation, so I was pretty excited to see theirs. Ours is actually a lot more robust than theirs, which I would expect because a township by nature is more rural, whereas we're more urban. So, I mean, just page number, they have 7 pages, we have 17. So, but I do have to, if this goes through, I do have to look at it in terms of our properties that are currently in the industrial zones, because we can't require setbacks that would not allow that building to happen. Justin, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Like, I have to make sure they would fit, and I'm waiting to get the dimensions of those properties to make sure that our setbacks are not overly cumbersome.
We wanted the larger setback. I think Council and Planning Commission wanted the larger setbacks at the light business district
Right.
because we have a lot of residential areas.
Right.
So-
Yes, and
Right.
yes, and that's, but so I have to look at the ordinance in terms of that, and I'm waiting for, Derek said he can help me out with those, just to make sure that we're not, because you can't say you allow a usage and then make the restriction so much that they can only put, 25 foot by square building due to setbacks. So, that's not really good. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we do have it done. I'm just waiting for council to consider it. And Mary, you were right. The deadline for county planning to be considered in August has passed. We're now up to September.
So till council would do something in August, you're into
Yes.
October, and then it comes to us also.
Yes.
And just looking at the light and general industrial within the borough right now, that's mainly occupied land. And, there would be some question about the old Colonial Metals property out there, what's happening with that. But I think what got me when all this discussion about the noise from the AI data centers, all I kept thinking about is the summers living in the 600 block of Chestnut Street, hearing Colonial Metals.
The word.
You could still,
Mhm.
but you got used, unfortunately, you
Well,
got used to it. But,
We all say,
yeah,
well, those properties are occupied, so we don't have to worry about
but
that.
you don't know what's happening.
But the reality is, this
Big
is
money.
what's happening out there.
Right.
This is
Right.
what's happening out there.
Mhm.
They're going to people, developers are going, they're waving giant checks and saying, how about you sell to me?
And right now, there are questions about that North Second Street
And
property.
exactly. And
Yes.
so if they're waving a check for 4 times
Yeah,
the appraised value in someone's face, you don't know what that person's going to do. And what's to say they're not going to, because
mm-hmm,
it's not just that property out there that's in that zone.
right.
There are homes. They could purchase them, and since they're existing non-conforming use, they can tear down those homes without any question. And there would be nothing for us to stop that at this point.
Right.
So that's what I'm
We
trying
need to
to.
look forward, yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to let you know, it is in the works. It's pretty much done. I still had a couple of things I wanted to side by side with the, I also have one from Peckway Township that I just got last week. So I'm side by side in that one, but I think that's not quite as robust either, because again, township.
What does Lancaster Cities look like? Didn't
There's,
they just passed theirs?
yeah,
And we always kind of said, Lancaster is
we're actually
a
more,
bigger,
we're actually more restrictive than the city. But
Okay.
what I've put together is more restrictive than the city.
Okay. Look forward to seeing it.
So, yeah, it took a long, I mean, I put a lot of time into it.
Mhm.
But we initially got it from a township in York,
York,
but then
right.
had to make it our own. Kelly was helping work on it, so
Okay.
we'll see. But yes, it is coming.
Thank
Okay.
you, Heather.
Moving forward.
Hi, Sharon Lentner. I just had a question about the ordinance as I was looking at it. It almost looked like we went to a smaller description of decommissioning. And I find that to be a little troubling because some that I've looked at set forth timelines.
Sharon,
I'm sorry?
we don't
We don't
have
have
that
that.
ordinance in front of us.
Oh,
We just
do
have the
not
one.
have, all we have in front of us is the change from permitted.
To
We
not
do
the
not have the
Oh.
data center ordinance in front
I'm
of
sorry.
us.
I thought you
No,
did.
that's okay.
No.
That's what Heather
That-
was talking about.
that's
She
what-
hasn't
okay.
finished the draft. Yeah, we haven't even seen that, which,
Yeah.
I mean, you can voice your opinion, but we
Well,
don't
I
even
just-
know.
I
guess we
just
don't
think
know
it should be more restrictive in decommissioning. We should have,
Fair.
some of them have advance notification. If they know they're going to have to decommission, then they alert the borough. And, there's timelines involved where this doesn't really, I mean, it says that a plan shall be submitted, but there's nothing really. And my fear is that if someone does put a data center in anywhere in here, if something falls through financially or otherwise and they walk away, we're going to be left with a mess to clean up, maybe a
Yeah.
bunch of.
And we already cleaned up a mess.
Yes,
didn't
we did. We don't need to start over. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Sharon.
She is referring to the draft, to what
What Heather
Heather
was
is
talking
working
about.
on, which is
Yeah.
the draft ordinance that outlines everything for data centers.
Kathy Veza. Would you like to tell you where I live?
Yeah.
Okay.
You live in Columbia.
First of all, I would like to thank Ethan Byers and the people who voted to move this along at the last meeting. Took a little guts to stand up against all that nonsense, so I thank you. I have a few questions, and a lot of this stuff is always surrounded by rumors, so if I'm misspeaking, just tell me. It was my understanding that the company looking to build this AI center was party to the document that we were working on to give input. That
Kathy,
seemed,
We don't have that
We
information.
don't
That's the one
have
we
that
don't have.
document,
Those
so,
are, that's bid
Yeah.
information that would go to council. We don't see that.
yeah.
okay. So you also don't have the thing that she was reading.
Which
tonight.
is the same
Yeah.
thing.
So
Correct.
how are you to make a decision without any?
We aren't making a
Well,
decision.
not
we
on
under-
that. So we're just asked to
Recommend.
recommend this ordinance, which
Okay.
has to do with where they're allowed.
Okay,
So and that's what, Mary commented on the importance of having standards in place. So where if you do get an application for something, there's standards for the
which
council
is
to
a
evaluate.
very good idea.
Yeah, and that's what
And-
Heather's working on, but that's also what you are talking about and Sharon as well. But we haven't received that. And I guess, like as she said, it's still in draft. It hasn't even presented to the full council, but
Okay.
that's a fair,
Question.
question. Yes, very fair question.
And then another thing, and I'm new to this because, and it's my fault, I should have gotten involved many, many years ago. If indeed one person is doing the lion's share of the drafting of this, shouldn't that person be an expert at this? And nothing against you, but this is a pretty big decision.
I think we've heard Heather state that she has been working with other members of council. She has been working with the borough solicitor. It's not a case of her doing this on her own.
Well, and I understand it's not a one.
Right.
And the borough
person.
engineer.
And the
that's
borough
Derek.
engineer,
Yeah.
you know.
And nothing against any of those people.
Municipalities,
Right.
the Lancaster County Planning Department. I also, as part of the Lancaster County Planning Commission, I sat on a whole big fact-finding thing that what came out of that was that the county planning department's data center information that they put out. I sat in on all of those. I listened to all of the
And I give you kudos for that,
yeah.
because it's boring and many people would not want to bother. However,
I actually enjoy it. I don't
well,
mind
but
it.
my point is this though.
Kathy, would you please address us?
Yes, my point is this. This stuff comes upon us very quickly, this AI data center stuff. The way I would describe the difference between a data center and an AI data center is building NASA in the middle of Columbia as opposed to giving someone a notebook to take down some information. That's the gigantic difference in these things. And I know it's a very unpopular thing to say, I'd be willing to pay more taxes to not have that place built here, because I'll be paying way more money if we build it and my property value goes down and everything else. And it's not, I think people that are against this are being portrayed as boogeymen that are afraid of change. That's not what this is about. This is a monumental thing. And it would impact the entire community, not just Columbia. All the money that we spent in Columbia working on the riverfront and all of the things that are there, nobody wants to sit down at the river after they build one of these places here. And that's a fact, because it's happening all over the country. It's not by accident that they're coming to a community like ours, small community. They have a legion of lawyers behind them. We don't. And thank you to the people that are willing to work on this, but we're not experts, you know? And I think experts need to, and when I say experts, people, technical people, not just well-meaning people.
Like the young man there.
Well, right. I mean, no, not that you want to listen to that, but what I'm saying is, you wouldn't want to call me in after I read a book on brain surgery and have me work on your brain. So, that's all.
And that's fair. Now, I will say, to Heather's credit, you were a regional representative to the Planning Commission, and you definitely did take the time to do so. And the county's guidance on this as a land use issue is a very good document. So thank you for working on it. But, the concerns are fair. Yeah.
Heather is currently a member of the Lancaster
Right.
County Planning Commission.
Eric?
Eric Hoffman, 914 Spruce Street. Congratulations, Justin. I'm going to respectfully ask you to vote no on this and return it back to council. When council met at joint session with Planning Commission, and they were developing the criteria for McGinnis property for the light and business use, data centers were put in there. They were put in there because data centers had to go into a zone in Columbia. And all other locations exposed Columbia to data centers. This zone we can control because the borough owns the property. The current ordinance does both general and light industrial. So when you combine those two and you look at the properties on the map, both properties are larger than the McGinnis property. So somebody could come in, buy those two areas, and Columbia has very little authority over it. Columbia does have full authority over McGinnis, and that's why we put it there. And that was agreed upon by both council and planning commission. The second thing I would say is the only vote for a data center was 0-7. That's the only recorded vote in Columbia Borough on data centers. So I think you ought to wait till the ordinance is done, and then if you want to move it out of light business, then you have protection for the people of Columbia. Right now, there's no protection. Just my thought.
Evening all. Scott Frederick, South Fifth Street. I would ask that you vote in the affirmative to this. Reason being, if there are zones that by law, there's got to be an area where the data centers can be in. If it doesn't have to be one lot, as was mentioned, I believe it was you, Mary, before, they'd have to buy up numerous ones to make it. Well, some of us are old enough to remember Trump's Casino down in New Jersey. That was the same deal. That was the same deal. He had to eminent domain, kick people out of their homes, old ladies, old people that 80s and 90s, kick them out of their homes. They didn't get fair market value for those homes. But, you know, you either sell or you don't sell. That's up to the data center's developer. How bad do you want it? How bad are you going to throw money around? Basically, what it comes down to is the town overwhelmingly has said we don't want them in here. By law, we have to allow them somewhere. That's fine. But by our zoning and our ordinances, we can dictate the more than likely the size of it, if it's going to be put in. And if not the size, then certainly zone it with certain ordinances as far as the constant humming, how many decibels, that kind of stuff. So they have the areas where they could build them, maybe not 141-acre lot all in one shot like this is, but they can certainly, like I said, on the internet, on Facebook, let them put it from Front Street to right here, 3rd Street, so that the whole town can enjoy the constant humming and the loud noise. Why just, and as I've said also, my wife and I, we've been in town for 10 years, coming up on 10 years this fall. Our house is paid off. In just the last 5 years, we put a ton of money into that house. Solar panels, carpet, sheds, fences, a new walk-in shower. We're 66 and 67 years of age. We want to retire here. We want to live here. If a data center comes in, you're going to see a mass exodus of residents of this town. And I, for one, will be looking for somebody to sue if my property value goes in the tank, because I did not invest all this time and all this money to make this, quote unquote, my forever home, our retirement home, to have some people, in my opinion, they're just trying to right a wrong in the past by getting out from underneath debt. As this lady has said before, most people would be willing to pay some extra in taxes, although now's not the time to even discuss that. And this isn't the body to bring it up before, but that can also be offset by things such as single hauler trash. That will recoup some or most, or possibly even in a few examples, all of the tax increase. If we're $1 million in the deficit, in the red right now, and we have 4,000 homes in this, or 4,000 tax-paying properties, that's $250 a pop. Do the math. you can recoup it. You can recoup it, but I respectfully ask you people to vote in the affirmative to change this. Thank you.
Let's call for the vote.
Okay, we have a motion. Oh, sorry, Jeannie.
I just wanted to reiterate what he said in the line of May 26th, we had a meeting at the fire hall. It was filled to capacity. We had to ask some people to leave, and they all stayed outside. We had over between 300 and 500 people there, so say 400. Say 75 to 100 didn't live in town. That's still a considerable number of people that came out to say no on the data center over there behind Manor Street. It is a neighborhood. It has no business putting a data center there. And I don't want one in my backyard, but nobody's going to want one in their backyard. But the neighbors were there before. In the general industrial and heavy industrial, there's already places there that are noisy. People are used to the noise or the sound that comes out of them, ASC and metals. So I just want to say I would appreciate it if you would vote yes to pass this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Right?
Good evening, Frank Doutrick. Lived here all my life, and I come to these meetings to educate myself. And then on all the nights, I forget my hearing aids. I was glad somebody asked about speaking up, but I almost left, but I thought, no, I don't want to miss nothing. I can piece it in. Justin, I don't mean to pick on you. You work in Mountjoy Township or Mountjoy
Still do, yeah.
Township.
Part-time.
Is that what Messick's is in? Messick's
It
building?
was.
Yes. I followed that when they built it, and I've never seen a building so big, so put together. It would take probably half a day just to go through the whole place. I never made the open house, but I looked at that, and wasn't long after that, right across the street. I don't know what that place is that they built there. Do you know what that is?
I don't. That's in Raffo Township, but I mean, there's an Amazon warehouse down there, all sorts of things in the business park that really filled up. I think it's.
But
nice
I
down
look
there.
at the construction that's going on there. Is there any of these proposed up in there, or you going through this? You're not.
I'm not sure. No, I don't
Oh.
know. I don't think there are proposed there, but I also don't know.
They have so much open land.
Yeah.
You know, here we just got one parcel. The one thing I want to touch on, Colonial Metals was mentioned. I know a friend that knows probably the previous owner. I don't know what's going on. I do know that they removed all the structural steel and everything on the inside, and it's not for sale, it's for lease. They have the
It's in the news.
They have the rentals there, the buildings, they have the place where they put the wrecked cars. That's how I guess they're going to look at that out there. I don't know how this would figure into the new type ordinance that you're talking about. But like I said, I come here to educate myself. I would hope council would do a day trip and go somewhere where they have one of these so we can get the true answers. And I'm up in the air. I hear this, I hear that. I would like to go with them if I had to pay my own way. Talk to the leaders, talk to the people that live there, and get a true picture so I would know what to vote on. Where do you people go to enhance your information to make a decision on what you're going to make a decision on? Where do you go for that information?
I guess it depends on the topic. Yeah, it depends on the topic. Land use things, zoning, land uses like this that are kind of a big deal, a big impact, but are also kind of ubiquitous in the United States. They're it's an everywhere issue. There is a lot of information. Some of it could be biased, misleading, or whatnot, but often we lean to our friends at the county. DCD will often prepare guidance materials on what municipalities should be considering. That they're not always offering, here's the answer, because it's always context, right? There's always a context, but at least prompting you as to what sort of things you should be looking at and what those potential impacts are. And that goes back to the proposed ordinance, that it's important that we get this right. But as with anything that kind of hits swiftly with a lot of impact, you're almost guaranteed that you're not going to get it perfect. But it's very important that we at least address what's important to our community and that sort of thing. So that's fair. It's a very fair question. We rely upon, the borough engineer, we rely upon staff for a lot of things. And sometimes it's just personal research or even knowledge of particular topics.
Am I correct? You're the township manager?
I gave that up.
Any reason?
Any reason?
Oh, personal.
Have you ever had to manage people, do personnel? Not for me.
Yeah, I talked to previous borough managers, and the stress and all that they go through, it's a wonder they last as long as they do. Yeah, I knew you was, and I heard that. I wasn't sure what your status was.
Yeah, that was a few years back. Yeah, yep. Personnel, not my forte.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Hi, Kathy Embleton, 1028 Locust Street. I would urge you to vote to accept or make a recommendation to accept the proposal to change the zoning ordinance. One of my big concerns is that I don't know how we can trust council to come up with a data center ordinance that will support and protect the people of Columbia versus coming up with a data center ordinance that is geared towards a data center developer to get them in there to sell the property. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of the Lancaster Online article that was published a couple weeks ago. There was a data center ordinance that was prepared. It was up for discussion at the June 23rd meeting. Eric started off by saying that he wanted to be clear that Saudi was still in the picture. They were still interested, that they had been in contact with borough officials. And then Heather admitted that and Eric said that we had sent our data center ordinance to Sadia. They reviewed it, sent it back to Heather. It was redlined, and then she made some changes based on the Sadia recommendations. I believe that's a conflict of interest. We should not be working with the data center developer who is intent on purchasing that property. That should be developed within our council alone, outside of their purview. Thank you.
Would just like to, because I've been accused several times now of working with the developer, and I just wanted to clear something up. As you guys know, in the municipality planning code, in the MPC, which is state law, it allows a developer to come in here with a proposed ordinance and present it to Columbia Borough. And by law, we have to consider that. So it's not unusual for someone writing municipal codes, ordinances, to work with a developer to get language in there. Because honestly, had I not taken their suggestions and looked at things and stuff, they could have come in here and presented exactly what they wanted to do. And do you know how much a zoning, how much it costs for us to do a hearing to change the zoning ordinance, it's thousands of dollars, and we would have been obligated to do that with just their ordinance alone without having it. So it's not that I took and you guys, honestly, you don't have to trust me, but I'm telling you, when I looked at the red line copy that they gave us, there's a lot in there that I did not include because it does not protect Columbia Borough. There was a lot that they wanted taken out that I did not take out. I kept it in there because that's what's best for Columbia Borough. Yes, I did.
Please, she has the floor.
But there was a lot that I did not include, and the things that I did change were thought out and everything else. And because what was proposed was excessive based on the sites within the borough, the setbacks that were originally proposed. There, like I said, it's not that, and a lot of what I changed, it was mechanical, and looking at it, it was better written the way they worded things. So it's not like I'm trying to screw the borough and I'm doing whatever Sadia wants, because honestly, that was not my intent. And honestly, I have never felt from day one, I was never convinced that they were the right buyer for this property, but no one has let me say that. Because I understood what they were about and everything else. And yet I keep hearing you guys saying, oh, you're working with Sadia, you're working with Sadia. No, I'm not. I'm doing what's best for the borough, but we also have to comply with the law. And you guys know that they would be able to come in here, plop down what they want, and we would have to consider it. And it would cost us thousands of dollars to do what the law requires us to do. So it's better if we can work together before we get to that point, talk to them and say, no, we really we don't want to do this. I mean, I think the best example I can give, the most recent example, was when the developer that wanted to put the billboard out by the highway, by the old visitor center, the zoning ordinance change that was done to accommodate that billboard came to us from a developer. It was not developed in-house. It was done by their attorney. And they came to us and said, this is what we want to do, and this is why we want to do it. Council had no say in that ordinance at all. So that's what I'm trying to prevent by doing it and by trying to work together, because nothing stops them from coming in here and saying, I want you to consider this. And by law, we have to consider it.
Thank you, Heather. I mean, I think it's a good stopping point, and in terms of substance of it, it's fair to address that. We're certainly
We're
We'll-
going afield. If you have a question for Heather, you can address it to her.
Yeah. So we'll wrap on that. I mean, obviously that'll come when we're looking at the standards
At
for the
the
data
ordinance
centers.
itself.
One last comment for myself. I mean, I probably, when we discussed adding data centers as a use when we had our joint meeting, I think most of us had the concept of, a lower impact, clean technology, good jobs, all this sort of thing. But that's what the standards will hope to differentiate between something that's very high impact, heat, water, electricity, versus, kind of a clean technological type of building. I think if we had that separation and we were looking at making it a conditional use in light business, but only for the less impactful half of a data center, I think that would make just as much sense. But since we don't have standards in place, and we do have this ordinance that did come from council, despite it being a split vote, I'll leave it at that. I think, the bottom line is making sure we have good standards in place, and then that kind of opens the door to saying what type where, even more so after the fact. This doesn't necessarily have to be closed in terms of the discussion as to where different types of data centers can go in our borough. It just, I think it starts the conversation. Okay, so we have a motion that has been seconded on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes 4-0. And we look forward to seeing the standards for the data centers in the coming months. Yes, sir. Yeah, the motion from Mary and seconded by Deb was to recommend that the ordinance be adopted by council as presented. So, yep. Okay. All right, thanks. We will move on to our workshop with DCED. We appreciate their patience, obviously, as we work through some very challenging topic for the town.
We ask if people want to have discussion to take minutes.
We do still have a meeting going on right now. We have DCED coming to talk for their workshop.
Welcome back, Nick.
Good evening.
Thank you for your patience.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Columbia.
I'm sure you're familiar. This is a topic everywhere. I'm sure you guys
Yeah.
are very familiar in seeing this in communities. Thanks for experiencing it with us.
Yeah. We've been getting our fair share of calls for sure. The cr-
going to be my retirement job, just saying.
Trust me, Heather, you want to go to antiques, it's much more fun.
Or a plant store, I haven't decided yet.
That would be fun too.
Well, the crowd thinned out a little bit, but appreciate you guys who stayed. So yeah, Elise, did you get my slide deck
Did you send that to me?
via email? Towards the end of the day, but
Okay.
we also have.
All right. I will find
Um,
that.
While you're looking that up, I will relay, we did have some comments from Brad, just in general, about the importance of the work that we did on the zoning map, and we were working through how to consolidate. But, I think you're more focused, the project that you're working on is more focused on, how do we, it's not just the zoning districts, but, how are we making the guts of this work, right? I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the analysis we had been working on, the districts and the geography,
It's not
is
lost.
still valid and not
Right.
lost,
Right.
So certainly want to reiterate that for their sake, since we had worked on that quite a while. You guys are helping get us over a very big hump.
Okay. I'm going to go run and put it from my email to this computer. So if you want to just
Yeah.
stall on the agenda,
Sure.
explain that it needs to be explained really well. So.
Yeah. Did you guys all get those sort of pre-workshop questions?
The 3 steps.
Again, I wasn't expecting any kind of like prepared.
You're talking the workshop number 2 discussion.
Yes.
guide.
Yes, that.
Yes.
We all got that.
Yep.
We all got that.
Good, good. Any thoughts on any of those questions, or that's a good
Well,
place to
that's
start.
loaded. There are a lot of questions here, but I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
your prompts about the mass and the style of buildings is very valid. We have a hard, and I think that is one of the reasons why people come here, people stay here. These are, you have architecture and the town feel, the walkability is very important to a lot of people. So a lot of that has to do with that. I think overall, to strive for higher quality housing, continue to see that through. So there's a little bit of tug of war between, maintaining the historic character as well as providing
Right.
better housing. So those, I think, have always been kind of common themes amongst the borough. To me, those were some of the things that popped up. I think that is important, which kind of leads into where some of the things are going with the form, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Walkability is big. So having mix of commercial uses in amongst the residential neighborhoods was something we had continued to talk about through our kind of planning meetings and workshops. You had called attention to that as well.
Basically going back to the idea that years ago you had so many like stores or family businesses within the residential areas where, they had the first floor, or maybe even just the first room was the business and the rest was their
Yeah.
residence,
Right.
and we had looked at somehow being able to encourage that within the residential neighborhoods.
Mm.
And the walkability is a big thing in town. When you get into form-based, I know we've discussed form-based before, and
How long ago was that?
uh,
Just curious.
it was a while. It was a while ago. This goes back to 21.
Jess, I think.
I actually I was going through some files and
Mm.
found this, it was November of 21.
Jessica from C.S. Davidson is our
Mhm.
borough engineer, but she's a planner and she was helping us with our workshops.
Ah.
We were in the years prior working on various topics, and that was
Yeah, I
the discussion.
found that in some stuff
Some
I
last
was
one
going
of
through.
those.
So that was from November of 21. We were getting into some of that discussion with form base.
Which
Mm.
loops back into, encouraging additional commercial flexibility, that mix of like this person, residential scale commercial activity amongst, residential area. We expanded the downtown commercial,
Right.
where I live, and it's row homes, but
Mm.
you've seen, you got the kind of the variety shop on that block. You've got the School of Music, which is directly next door to me, and it's been perfectly fine.
Sure. Yeah.
It's actually been really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things, but again, not to go back to the previous topic, but scale and impact
Mhm.
versus, like whether it's strictly downtown, I think is an important factor too.
Right. Right. Well, with that prequel into our workshop, let's get it rolling. Just a quick agenda note. I'm going to just recap workshop 1 so that we kind of remember some of the things we did. So after so for workshop 1, we did come away with at least 6 takeaways from the notes. First takeaway was that simplification, it seems like it's generally supported amongst everyone here. It's support overall, but again, I heard a lot of comments about preserving character, not sacrificing anything about character and integrity. And so that it should preserve meaningful distinctions between districts. I know I brought a couple of materials and kind of highlighted, some things between districts, and some districts were just not that different. There's also a comment about how residential probably is one of the easier places to start. A little bit more so than maybe commercial, how that could be a little bit more of a complex thing to tackle. But overall, simplification is generally supported. Number 2, Columbia is a built-out borough. I asked the question that y'all kind of laughed at and smiled at a little bit. I was like, so what's the deal with Columbia? Why is it, like landlocked, and you're surrounded by, West Hempfield Township. And the story behind that's kind of fascinating, and it's also fascinating how like the river is like a thing too, like
Yep.
crazy. So, but Columbia is a built-out borough, so there's an importance placed on, neighborhood form and compatibility rather than simply regulating land uses. The future growth is going to be, primarily through infill and maybe potential reuse options and existing sites. And I know there's been some unfortunate events, so even after fire or demolition, what will replace what's, taken down. So that's an important takeaway. I'd say number 3, form may be more important than use in certain areas. There's definitely some concern around new development that fits within, the built environment here, particularly where, multiple lots could be assembled. Compatibility may be better addressed through building form and scale and placement and design standards than through really detailed use, dense regulation. And it's more about the form. And then of course, parking is something that seems to always come up in any planning related discussion. But parking here can continue to influence redevelopment. Parking is often, a barrier for some small businesses and things. So that's not something to totally overlook. Number 5, I would say, yeah, certain districts deserve special attention. I learned that from you guys that Columbia once functioned with only 3 residential districts, which was some time ago, but that's pretty interesting. And as you know, Columbia does not have 3 residential districts anymore. The DC and NC have only 2 differences between them that we highlighted. The light business district, we talked a lot about that earlier, and data centers, right? I think that's kind of all that needs to be said there. And then number 6, which is also really important to consider for the built environment, is its history. If you want to understand a place, you got to understand its history. And so a lot of history in Columbia. And I heard a kind of a theme come up too in the first workshop, how industry and mom and pop shops were historically mixed. There was definitely a great mixture of uses. So that's just kind of a recap of workshop 1. I think, does that sound about right? Okay.
Please, could you forward that to us? Could we
Yeah,
have that?
I will do that tomorrow morning when I get back to the office.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now I want to do something a little bit interesting to kind of like frame the conversation. One of the things that I wrote in the SOW for Columbia was to discuss other model ordinances and examples throughout the state. Every place is different. So is it comparing apples to apples or citrus to citrus? I don't know, but I think it's a useful comparison. Clymer Borough, Western PA, Indiana County. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but it's a nice little town, about 1,200 people. Their form-based code is short and sweet at about 80 pages total. It uses 5 zones. And there's a zone use table, a building table, and street typographies. And they did not have form-based code at all before this. I think this was adopted, almost 20 years ago now when they switched over to form-based. It was a while. I think they worked in conjunction with Indiana University to kind of come up with this. But it's a pretty good example of what can be done with form-based code. Next slide. Okay, yeah, so it's a little hard to see, but basically on the right side of the screen on the slide is a table. It's a zone table. and there's 5 zones. You kind of see the 5 columns all the way to the right. And then on the left side are all the kind of like uses listed down on the table. And the 5 zones in Clymer Borough is a slope zone where it's kind of like, you know, it's what it sounds like. It's kind of like conservation zone. There's steep slopes. It's environmentally sensitive. Neighborhood zone A, neighborhood zone B, a downtown zone, and a rail trail zone. So those are the 5 zones in Clymer Borough. And those, the key is like those black squares is what's allowed on a lot or any building. And the hollow square is a use allowed in any outbuilding only. The triangle is a secondary use allowed on a lot, and the filled in circle is allowed by special approval by Borough Council. And then if there's nothing there, it's, you know, it's not permitted. So it's kind of a simple thing to look at. It's kind of a thing of beauty, you know, as far as planners are concerned.
That's why she's standing.
Yeah, I wanted to see it.
And then on the left side of the screen is another interesting table. That's a building table. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. And so, again, the columns in the center there are the zones. On the right side is examples of building types. And then on the left side is like the different uses, like highway frontage or big box or drive-through convenience, downtown store. And it kind of fills in where those building types are kind of like allowed, right? So that's the form, and that's kind of the zone, all in one with those 2 different tables. And then on the next slide, I think I have, yes, their actual zoning map, which is, looks like kind of like a weird, you know, weird shape. Yeah. But you can see the 5 zones very clearly there. It's pretty simple. On the legend is also the streams, the major highways, the lot lines, and those 5 zones. That big green chunk there is neighborhood zone B, and the lighter green chunk is neighborhood zone A. So you can kind of see where that is. And the rest there in the central part of that oddly shaped borough is their downtown zone. So I think that kind of illustrates the point. I'm not going to go deep dive into their zoning ordinance other than just say, you know, this isn't like a template or anything, but this is a cool, you know, sort of example, just to kind of generate some ideas. So next slide. Oh yeah, one last thing about the zoning ordinance that's kind of cool. And it probably works because they're a very small borough. I can imagine this would get a little bit unwieldy if it was a larger place, but those are all the main streets in the borough, and there's a street typology to this. And so based on street typology, there's some form and rules based on how frontage works and how form will work on different streets, which is very interesting. And they've labeled the main thoroughfare. They've sort of categorized the smaller arterials and the neighborhood streets, and, you know, kind of the main area in their central downtown core. So I think I mean, they've listed this types, like type A is that big red line there on the left side, and that's from Franklin to Lick Creek to 3rd Street. So like it's literally defining what section of road that is. which again, I think works really well because they're a small borough. But that type of typology is pretty interesting.
It makes sense, you know, in our context. A lot of the form that we're either trying to keep intact is there to already to inform the ordinance, which is the similar situation there.
Yeah.
I've worked in a township where they went with a form-based code, and it was just a little bit out of place because almost all of the commercial development balked at wanting to put the thing next to the road and do this and, you know, all these sorts of things.
Mm.
And it was like, well, we'll just go somewhere else. And of course, you know, caves. But that's less of an issue, you know, for the infill and things here because, you know, a lot of the properties are already small. Even if you buy multiple properties and assemble them, you know, you're limited in how you develop. So having something that says, you know, we want to retain this as much as possible. You know, kind of like with the hotel redevelopment. It's like, look, you know, you want updated housing, but we don't want to lose that on the main street. That facade, the form, the mass. You know, those sorts of things are probably more important than, you know, like what a lot of greenfield development has to consider.
Across the street.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, that hotel as well. But yeah, you're right. That over there too. But specifically that because of the way that we had already lost chunks of these old buildings, and you didn't want to lose any more of them.
Right.
It became even more important.
Because most of what you're seeing in that picture is structure,
Yeah.
not the opera house. Bottom floor is.
Yeah. You're in it.
You're in it.
But yeah, a lot of that form is still there today. Not the cool lamps.
So, like a planner, I give everything a title. Workshop 1 was Emerging Themes. Now I'm titling this Emerging Directions. So, kind of going along with kind of what we've been saying, there's levels to this, and there's levels of integration to this, and there's a lot of options, and there's, you know, could even explore a whole other set of options, but I wanted to kind of interrogate the form-based and hybrid sort of options here first, and calling it like a 3-option ladder. But the very first, like, immediate direct sort of step on that ladder could just be targeted cleanup, where you know, there's more clarity on district purposes and definitions, use categories, cross references, just really kind of tightening things up. Maybe a little bit of simplification as well. Just kind of like a lot of those practical, you know, steps. And then another step into that world, into that ladder, would be maybe like a simplified hybrid, you know, kind of option or direction. There's a reduction in overlapping districts, and then there's an addition of like form and context, right? Different standards for infill and mixed use, basically. And then a step even further, if Columbia is feeling extra bold, would be a broader restructuring of the zoning ordinance, which could incorporate further form-based standards. Would be reorganization of portions of the ordinance around zones, building types, streets, and frontage. So all those things, going a little bit deeper into that world, basically. You know, conventional zoning still does useful work, you know, kind of in that first option. Basic use permissions, you know, a lot of things would really kind of stay similar. In that second run, you know, there'd be more form sensitive standards that fill the gap, you know, building placement, the scale, the frontage, facade, parking location. Those things would be considered a little bit more in depth. With a more, with that broader form-based restructuring, there'd also be targeted overlays Um, I know the historic district here already does a lot of heavy lifting. That's kind of another takeaway from workshop one, honestly. So that'd be kind of an easy thing to tap into, is just, doing some of the lifting through overlays. So I think that sets up our conversation well. We prepared more analysis and some maps. I know everybody loves maps. So next slide. Okay, yeah. This slide basically says what I've been saying. The form-based stuff, Clymer Borough, it's not a template. It's just a useful comparison. It's development that's focused around form and function. And a very useful zoning ordinance can indeed connect use, building form, street context, and inflow quality. It can accomplish all those goals. So, in terms of zone, when we think of like the zone of like a form-based code, where is the lot? The use, what activities fit there? Building type, what form fits? Street type, how does it meet the street standards? That's all the, all the inner workings. How should parking and all the signage and transparency work? But I want to get to the next slide. This is our analysis of the basically of the zoning, the whole zoning area of Columbia. We reviewed the central business and commercial core, residential. We did a little bit of a comparative review, and then we mapped out some potential concepts. So might be a little hard to see, but the purple is the high density residential. And the pinkish reddish color shaded areas are the medium density residential. We also have an outlined sort of red lines and some orange lines in there. And the historic district is that dotted shape. You can kind of make out there too. Lisa will come up here in a couple minutes and explain that a little bit further. But just for reference, so that's where the higher density residential lies, right? As it currently is in Columbia. Next slide. So yeah, come in a little bit more. You can kind of see, we'll explain the red boundary and that orange boundary a little bit more in a few minutes, but all of those yellow shaded parcels are single family lots, basically. Next map. And this is all of the, again, all of the more dense sort of residential as well as the institutional residential. And that's kind of where all of that lies. Next slide. And this is where all the low density residential is. It's kind of almost the inverse of that, almost, right? You see that rural residential and light density, lower density residential, kind of in the outer portions of the borough. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa to kind of further explain the residential, well, the mapping analysis. That will make the residential make a little bit more sense too.
All right, thank you. So I know that you've done some studies of the districts in the past, and I just want to be clear that these are just kind of like study maps that we were doing for ourselves. Kind of, as you know, last week we were looking at or last workshop we were looking at all the different districts and kind of when in making this study map, looking at, if you boil it down, how many, if I was looking just at, for example, in this case, the commercial mixed use districts, what does that boil down to? And it kind of came down to what I was looking at on the spreadsheet is about 3. And so I think it's hard to separate where the districts are on the map from what the permitted uses are. Like they just have to be kind of, they're so intertwined. So I'm going to go through how I got here. And again, these are just concepts for discussion. So the red is intended to show what could potentially be the like high density mixed use downtown core. So this would be like the highest density, probably the most permitted flexibility of commercial uses and mix of uses. The light orange is intended to show what could be like a transitional commercial neighbor, maybe a smaller, more limited use, maybe less dense form. So sort of like a transition from the most intense core to the residential districts kind of on the periphery. The dark gray and the dark orange, those are existing general industrial and light industrial. And then the purple is intended to indicate just sort of like a general commercial or like a commercial corridors districts. They could have, auto-oriented form standards or river-oriented, trail-oriented standards, potentially having sort of the same underlying permitted uses. If you go to the next slide. So here, this is, again, kind of started with those red and orange lines, started looking at the existing zoning districts and what's there and trying to group some of those together. So that one's not super easy to read. But if you go to the next slide. So a lot of this data we took from Lancaster County, their housing dashboard. So if you look at the hatched areas, which are a little hard to see, but it's so the black horizontal or diagonal lines, those indicate those are housing types excluding single-family detached, senior living, and mobile manufactured homes. So kind of 3 categories that you would not typically see in a dense urban core. The blue indicates the oldest, this is from the assessment data, the oldest residential structure was built before 1939. So you can see within the red center there, as well as most of the orange area, you have housing types that are not single family, not mobile home manufactured or senior living, and they're all older buildings. So you definitely have a clear concentration there. And next slide, please. All right, so this is, just roll my notes here. Okay, so again, the hatched areas in this case represent something different. They represent lots that are less than or equal to 3,000 square feet. So again, you can see that those are, not unexpectedly concentrated within the red area, the red lines. And then the blue indicates, and this is from, again, the Lancaster County data dashboard, residential mixed use zones. So not include, and I took out the institutional residential, and it also includes, and I also added the highway commercial and the riverfront commercial. And then you can see that apart from, I guess, in the southeast corner of the city, it's again largely concentrated within the red and orange lines. In this case, the blue indicates dwelling types and everything excluding one-family dwellings, rural residence estates, seasonal residence, mobile homes, all excludes all industrial, transportation, utility, except railroad terminals, bus transportation, and auto parking garage. Excludes auto dealer, car wash, storage, warehouse, distribution, drive-in, bank, ranch, billboard, stadiums, auditoriums. So the list kind of goes on, but it excludes those kind of larger commercial uses. Again, those kind of uses that you would not typically see in a dense downtown urban core. And then it is for those parcels are further filtered for parcels 3 acres or less. And we have a concentration within the red zone, somewhat less in the orange, and then even less outside of that. You can go to the next slide. So the red just for like working purposes or the downtown high density mixed use. You can see that the percentage of single family housing type on a per parcel basis is 9%. On an acreage basis, it's 10.5%. Next slide. So this is sort of the downtown transition, still mixed use. The number of single family parcels goes up a bit percentage wise, and as well as this by acreage. Again, none of this is really surprising, given the development of the borough over time. But I think it helps to kind of put on the ground where these districts could potentially be. In the next slide. So kind of blocked out the red area and the orange area, and then just showing here, if I, outside of those, the red and orange area, if we exclude places where single family residential would not be typically general industrial, you can see the list there. The percentage of single family parcels on per parcel basis is 81%, and on acreage basis is 30.6. Next slide.
And by single family, you're saying just detached.
Single
house.
family detached.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, and so that's as classified under the land use. So this is just kind of putting it all together. It basically just shows you where the concentration of so putting what is there now, and putting that to kind of a general district. I think you can see that sort of in that southeast corner, kind of just down below the dark gray section, that's residential, but that's like a real pocket of high density residential being separated from the main part of the downtown by the river. There's some industrial parcels there. That sort of makes sense. It's sort of emerging as like a high density residential, whereas the north central areas, a pocket of single family detached residential. I just have one more, at least, and this is just showing the purple lines on that. And sort of how that fits into everything else that's going on. That's it for me. I think Nick has a few more.
Yeah, that's really mostly it. After kind of like going through those maps and kind of going through the context, just coming back to those questions. Point of this workshop is to have discussion and feedback and thoughts on this. So really just kind of open the floor back to you guys on what you kind of see from all that.
I feel like we're kicking the tires on this sort of way to approach zoning, for a town that is most of the development we see is infill type things or reuse type projects. And, you know, I mean, I think this is the right lens, you know, so, but the, you know, the decisions, it's a big change to the zoning ordinance and how it's administered. And, you know, thinking of from the practical sense, you know, to have a consultant work with us and do it right and make the proper visuals so that it's useful and administratable, you know, will take money. But I think we're going through this period of, you know, we needed nudged to kind of get us some help to say, well, what if you look at it this way? Or, you know, what happens when you merge these districts? And we were able to get so far, but additional inspiration is good. That's kind of the way that I've been looking at this is, you know, getting a nice third party view and say, and a good one that's knowledgeable and has these experiences to say, maybe this is the way you need to look at it. So like when you say what part of the ladder, I mean, I think like ideally you would go the full bore and do something that's really going to kind of keep the character of the town, but also try to promote investment in people. But I think we're like on this learning, you know, mission right now to see like how far do we want to go? Is there like a hybrid type of thing, or you know, do you say, you know, there's a lot of commonalities in big areas of the borough. You know, how do you find a better way to keep what's important? You know, I think even going back to like when we did the economic development plan in like 2006 or 2008, and the themes of the comprehensive plan, it's always been like, we want to preserve, you know, the history, we want to preserve what makes the town unique, but we also need to progress, whether that's improving walkability and livability or getting good industry businesses in here. That's like always been the theme for 20, 30, 40 years. But, you know, we've had a hard time kind of coming up with the right tool to deal with land use matters. And that's just my opinion, but I'm also a planning person. So I get it. And sitting on this side, that's been the most challenge is, you know, how do you shake it up enough to where it's better and to where it's something that we can actually get followed through on. And this, to me, this is helping kind of explore that a little bit. That's just me.
Looking at the questions.
Yeah, I went to the fourth question already.
Well, I'm skipping down to the third, and I feel that our residential zones match what's there. When you look at our residential zones, I feel they really match what is in place. When you get into your downtown commercial, your highway commercial, your neighborhood commercial, I'm not sure that they all fit in those places. Probably the downtown commercial most fits, but I think with our expansion of the downtown commercial, we lost some of that downtown area. You know, because to me, when you say you're going downtown, you're going to Locust Street. You're not going to Cherry Street. You're not going to Walnut Street. You're going to Locust Street. And I think we've lost something there. The institutional, they are what they are. That's what's there. And for simplification, we kind of touched on that with Lancaster County planning. And I don't know that I feel I'm far enough knowledgeable on the simplification to answered the question as to where it makes sense. And the confusion, like we have a medium density residential business.
Yeah. And it's not a very,
So what is the difference between a medium density residential business and a neighborhood commercial? If, in fact, what it's designating a medium density residential business as like a place where you have doctor's offices and maybe beauty shops and things like that in those areas. Well, what's the difference between that and a neighborhood commercial? Why couldn't that all be classified if you're going to have a neighborhood commercial? Why wouldn't they fall into that? Only thing is then you run into the fact that we allow the residential units, the residential rental units in medium density residential business.
Oh, you mean the short-term rentals?
Short-term rentals.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
come up with the right word.
Yeah, see,
Yeah. so-
that's no longer the crisis right now.
No.
But it is,
It'll be
it
back.
is still an issue, yeah.
It will be back.
Yeah. But that's a really good point, Mary, because the zoning districts were the tool to say where to put that.
Where to put things.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's more controversial than
Right.
an oddity shop opening up on the street, but I mean, in terms of the importance and the divide and trying to figure out where,
Mhm.
so like, we don't want that to be the end all be all.
No.
It's like, it is going to be
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to jump to question number 2 because as much as I like less is better, I'm not quite sure if we can simplify it as much as we have stated. I find that very challenging to simplify it that much. There's so much going on in different parts of the town to just say, this is this part of the town, this is that part of the town. Just it all blends together sometimes. And that's what gives this town character. And that's what I liked about having the corner grocery stores or the corner of the grocery stores on one floor and everybody, the family lives upstairs. Because that's how I was raised. And one of the grocery stores in the middle of the block. And it's not uncommon to have 3 grocery stores, little mom and pop grocery stores in one block. So it was, and that's with the safety of growing up in that era because our mom and dad would let us go to the store and get something. Today, there's no way. Even up to Andy's, which is 3 or 4 blocks away from my house, and it's just, I didn't have to go upstairs. You just don't know who's renting what. But I just think simplification is my goal, but I find it very challenging to get it to that point.
and just so that I'm clear, simplification in this context is almost synonymous with consolidation, right?
Exactly.
Right. So the goal would be to, not have 17 or so
17
districts.
was intense. 17 was way too many.
You know,
But in that sense, because Marilyn's right, I mean, that's always been the stomach bug. Is there's so much nuance in town because of the way it was
That gives
built
it
over
character in
centrals.
Columbia.
It does.
Not all the other towns would like
But
that.
that's the challenge, right?
That is
So
the challenge.
can you consolidate, but there's other parts, there's other tools in the zoning ordinance that does
Right.
preserve kind of the nuanced approach, right? I mean, that's where it gets hard.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
When we did the comp plan like that, what we used was that future land use plan out of there.
Mm,
And that looks at combining low and medium density.
Yeah.
Into one district. And I think the high density is what it is.
those were great views of that on the map to
Yes.
see, the
Yes.
types of housing, and you've got it colored, and you see the concentrations, and then it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. You walk by it all the time. You drive by it, but to see it on a plan view, really makes it
Yeah.
stand out. So that was appreciated.
So are you thinking just having 2 residential zone districts?
That's what the comp plan is suggesting, just the 2 residential districts. That you would combine the low and medium. And according to that, that would take in 37% of the borough, 575 acres.
It just to kind of like go along with that too. Spending some time looking at the zoning ordinance, and looking at which districts are most similar, both in terms of use and bulk dimensions.
Dimensional.
Rural residential and low density residential are pretty close. I mean, they're pretty close. They're the same at heart, right? Medium density is a little different than I would say in looking at the ordinance the way it is right now. It is a little bit different than rural residential and low density.
It's that transitional neighborhood.
It's a transitional. It's what it is. And if you were to lump that in with another district, I would almost say it'd be more suited to be lumped in with the higher density rather than the low, just based on how the ordinance is written right now. But it is kind of its own little transition. So I'm not trying to make a case either way. You could have 2 districts, or you could have 3.
So what you're saying is you would lump the low and high density together?
The medium and the high.
Medium and high
Medium
together.
and
Yeah.
Keep low on its own.
Because the other kind of lower density residential district that we have is the rural residential district, which has very, very similar,
And we talked
Standards.
last time about just getting rid of.
Yeah, as lower
residential.
density. in the table of permitted uses, you can even see they're in the same exact column. And then, you have the
Yeah.
special, differentiated
Right.
in each square. That's the same with the high density residential and the high density residential multifamily, which just allows for apartments.
Right.
And Marilyn, to get to your point about how you like that the houses are so you were able to walk down the street to a grocery store. I think that high density is when we get into that high density, we kind of cut off a ton of those commercial. We kind of get rid of that mixed use
Ability.
element.
Right.
So it's now, this is just residential. We're not allowed to have any commercial in here. And there's a really stark line between the downtown commercial district and then the high density residential. And that's kind of where we see the little pop-ups of the medium density residential light business and like the neighborhood commercial. Whereas, in my opinion, if you were to make the high density residential a little more mixed use and have more, maybe higher standards for the certain commercial businesses that are allowed in there, but still having it, them able to be in there, then that could kind of get rid of a lot of the smaller districts that kind of make up for that, to
They're
make
just
that
carved
bridge.
out of the
Yeah,
bigger
exactly.
area.
So it's kind of like
Right.
we have these commercial spaces and then we're like, oh, well, we didn't zone for these ones that have already been here. And then that's kind of where we're starting to see a little more of like spot zoning and just kind of like changing the zoning to catch up with what's already there, which I think to make it blend more with our future land use and plan and like comprehensive plan, we want to try to like avoid that. And then, yeah, the lower density residentials with the rural residential, like those are pretty synonymous with each other. And then, yeah, you can either combine the high density and medium residential Or if you do want that distinction of like, hey, we're still pretty close to downtown, but we don't want any commercial space in here, then you could leave that medium density residential. But again, in such a small borough, that low density to medium, it's like there's not a ton of space between the two residential
Yeah.
spaces. So yeah, so if you want to continue
Yeah.
to,
Makes more sense.
yeah, so to be able to facilitate, hey, we do love when certain commercial businesses are in our residential districts because it does make it more walkable and, invites more, people to come and grow businesses here.
So like Mary said, she said, what's the difference between a neighborhood commercial and business?
Yeah, right. I think that was one of the
It should all be
comparisons.
same.
So,
All in one.
so would the best approach be to keep 3 residential and more of some of the neighborhood commercial into the high density and get rid of those smaller areas and then have medium and then low, or keep medium and high together and morph those small commercial ones into something else like downtown commercial? Or, I mean, is a high density like a mixed use to allow
Yeah.
small
Yeah. And I mean, I think,
businesses, or I don't know.
it's almost as if just like starting over with the map makes the most sense, right? Because the more that, we were doing this when we were trying to consolidate
Yeah,
the districts,
we
and it was
were,
kind of
yeah.
like, well, you run into but you get this little tail of this district, and it's like,
Right.
well, you almost just want to say, well, if you start over, and that's kind of like what you throw out there, and whether
Mhm.
3 districts or 2 districts is too
Right.
few, I mean, that's a good discussion. But the point being is you're saying like, well, this larger area has a lot more in common than the zoning ordinance makes it look. And then this area surrounding it has a lot more common with itself than the 4 different districts that's within it. And then it starts to make sense. Like, okay, now we're identifying these areas where it looks and has a similar look and feel in the types of housing. Now the devil becomes the details in, like you showed, well, yeah, but if you get up here and you're starting to transition out and you have the different standards for the different roads, right? As you showed in that example. So that allows you to deal with the nuance splits more than, okay, this intersection you can have commercial here. It's like, well, it's not so much the intersection that matters. It's, whatever it may be. And then that's where you look at bigger areas. And I think that's what we were really trying to do. The geography of these districts are larger, but they're also more like cohesive versus you got a pocket of this over there, a pocket of that over there. And like you said, we just looked at all the ages and all these sorts of things. And it's like, well, this is actually what's in common, not, little pockets of things.
That's what I'm
That's
seeing.
where we're trying to get.
What I'm seeing here is neighborhood commercial is the CVS.
Yeah.
Which is surrounded by a high density residential. And then you go over to 9th and Wright Street. And I guess that was because of Peter Lumber and Peel Coal Yard and the other industries that were in that area. That's the other part of the neighborhood commercial. That is surrounded by high density residential. So do you make mixed use then? And the thing is, those are there, any changes they be grandfathered at this point.
Sure.
But that amazed me and that probably happened when the Acme went in there at 16 and Locust. Because that was a residential mansion.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Remember the Acme.
Okay, we're not going to digress there.
If I could make a comment, one thing, when you think about this and I've heard you guys talk about simplifying and everything else, but then I also hear, well, we don't want to simplify too much because we don't want to lose the characters and things like that. But I would just encourage you to look at it through the lens of future land use is not just a buzzword. We have to make sure that our ordinance
is not such that it's difficult to determine what could go where for a developer. If we want to encourage development, we have, and we want to encourage that investment, we have to be able, we have to make sure our zoning ordinance encourages that and makes it easy to determine that, and not one of those where, you know, I've heard people say before, well, if you want to open a business here, you come in and talk to us, we'll tell you where it can go. That's not the reality, and that's, I don't think that is a good way to operate nowadays. In years past, that may have, you know, yes, everything was done on the good old boys, the wink and the handshake and the nod. That is not reality anymore, and I would encourage you to look at the zoning ordinance and to try and find that balance between maintaining character, but also making it easy for investment to happen. Because the reality is, if it's not apparent and it's too much work, they're going to walk. You know, we have to be friendly to and open to those new uses. And rather than spot zoning to accommodate a laundromat on Union Street, let's just say it's all mixed use, and in that mixed use, we allow a laundromat, we allow
If it
small
fits in the
grocery
building,
store.
you know, if
Yeah.
it fits in
We
there.
allow
yeah,
those
right.
kinds of things, you know, a doctor's office, whatever, because in reality, doctors are not opening
Offices,
in a house.
right,
Yeah.
it's not
Like
happening.
Dr. Carruthers, right?
Yeah.
They're not opening like that anymore. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But we can say we would allow these different things.
And then also, sorry, just to that point too, if you're kind of expanding your districts and allowing more mixed use out, because you were talking earlier about how that downtown commercial district has gotten so big, which does make it a little difficult to maintain, you know, a central character of, you know, a few streets. If you expand, you know, some more residential space to more of a mixed use space, that also could potentially help a little bit of parking issues too from such a congested downtown area where everyone is like if you just allow laundromats in the downtown commercial district because no commercials are supposed to go in the residential districts, then, you know, everyone has to drive their, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in it where I've only done laundry, you know, once every couple weeks. So I'm not carrying that down a couple blocks. I'm going to drive my multiple baskets of laundry and spend all day at the laundromat. So just kind of like simple things that, you know, could make it, I can just walk down to the laundromat or to the grocery store instead of having to drive to the one that's, you know, on Locust Street. So
Right now, we do have the laundromats in the residential areas in
Yeah.
town.
Walnut, Union.
Sixth and
Right.
Walnut down at. Mhm. Perry. Yeah. Third.
So, you know, we were about 45 minutes behind, and we obviously want to, you know,
Wrap this
but I mean,
up,
this is, no, I didn't mean it like that so much as, you know, like if, you know, we want to try to get you out of here by 9, but we also want to make sure that you're getting the right amount of feedback.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, the next step.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so that kind of puts the ball back in your court. You know,
Yeah.
what do you, I mean,
Are
you've
we
heard a
giving
lot.
you what
Yeah. Are we
we
giving
want?
you enough?
Yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah, no, I think so.
I mean, it's a good answer too.
Sorry, I spent a lot of time in Ohio, and that's, you know, that's a problem in itself. But
You'll forgive me.
but yes, I'm getting a lot of good feedback. I want to add though one more, just, you know, I know we only got a few minutes left here, but Elise, if you could go back to one of the first maps that we had up. Yeah. A little more. Yep, right there with all the yellow. Yeah.
This one?
All right, this one. Now, after our conversation, right, about, all this stuff, I want to go back to this map real quick because I know there's a lot of nuance. Every place is a living organism, and there's always going to be a lot of nuance. But all those yellow parcels is where the single family, like, homes are, like, for the most part. That's that use. And it it really kind of opens up Columbia for some future opportunities. I will just say that, like, the orange and the red kind of boundaries that Lisa described, and the opportunities for mixed use and stuff. Back to that ladder, I was talking about. There's steps you can take to kind of move the needle too, right? Like, you can start to create these blanket, areas, but then you have a lot of tools that will help regulate those nuances that are of concern within those sort of blanketed areas, and so I was really glad when I for this workshop, like, I'll just let you in behind the curtain a little bit. This workshop, like, I didn't know what was going to happen because my plans, like, changed so many times. And then when Lisa started doing these maps, I was like, whoa, it didn't even take that much, like, GIS analysis. She just put these maps together, and I was like, oh,
They say a lot.
maps are worth like 1,000 words, so I'm happy to share all of this material, share it with your peers. But I do think the maps do say something, and yeah, and I hope, if there's any other comments, before time's up, please, otherwise I'll just kind of go into next steps. But I did want to say that too, about sort of the latter options, and, like, we want to provide the end, deliverable, right, is giving Columbia a zoning ordinance, like, report. It's information, and you'll have that important information to do what you want to do with that. There'll be recommendations in there and stuff. So it's really up to you guys how you want us to shape that report. Tailor it. These workshops are just showing, like, what we're discovering, what we're finding, and it's kind of fun for me too, because I feel like I'm, like, winding up a toy and then, like, seeing what happens.
See what it does.
But so yeah, just keep that in mind. This document can be a little bit dreamy, or it could be, like, real practical, pragmatic, and I can tailor it, whichever way. But there's definitely a lot of tools that you can use to sort of regulate the nuances.
Do you feel that looking at the map is the first step to get us where we want to be? To look further at the form-based, at the simplification, that deciding what zones we even want to deal with, is that one of the first baby steps to take?
Yeah, I do. I think looking at that in tandem with looking
With
at
the rest, yeah.
with the rest, with the ordinance, and so yes, I do, and I think that's kind of why this workshop went in this direction, with a whole slew of maps. But
Because once you do that, then you actually look at your zoning ordinance and see how that has to be married together to get what you want, want the map to be able to
It-
do.
and what I mean, again, this is up to you guys, but if if what you want is to sort of make a conceptual map, right? Like for us to kind of make a, you know,
And I mean, to me, it's also like how I mean, I know again, you're not writing the ordinance, you're
No.
not proposing, yeah,
right.
but how does it work underneath? So kind of like it's like let's just say in our eyes, I think we have, based on the maps and the possibility to have bigger areas to address, right? And that's in a way simplification or
Bigger and
consolidation.
lesser.
But that it's like, okay, this is great. And then it's like, okay, well, how does it work? And that's the part that you were showing, like how the tables work and what they're looking at and those sorts of things. To me, sounds helpful, because I think if you're looking bigger picture and you're looking at how do we really kind of revolutionize the way that the zoning ordinance is to do exactly that. And again, for decades, we want to protect the good stuff and we want to reinvest. We want to attract reinvestment to get, kind of improve the other stuff. I mean, that's the really simplified way of saying that. But how does the zoning ordinance do that with different types of tools? Like maybe a little more exposure to that. Because like what Marilyn's saying is, yeah, I like the idea of, I want to boil these down, but I also, how do we make sure that, we do it right? And kind of the mechanics underneath. And how does the zoning officer, say, okay, somebody comes in and wants to do this, like, what am I looking at? So I think that's my perspective is the maps helped a lot, makes a lot of sense. I think we want to do that sort of thing, but how is the sausage made, behind the scenes? Some exposure there. But, we
Yeah.
also realize that your guys' time on the project is limited and you're only coming out so many
Yeah.
times. So, like the next step has to be a reasonable next step.
Right.
We're not asking for the
Does
big.
that come from us, the next step?
Yes, yes, it does. And it's based on the workshops. It's based on what we've kind of gone over here. So,
I think you've given us a lot of information and the maps locally is very helpful.
Yeah.
I think we all need to digest this and decide how we want to come back and say, hey, what are everybody's ideas?
Yeah.
Something that works better. And somebody else is saying, revisit that. I do, because there's two people that are missing.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think they really are very helpful in ideas. That's my thought. We need to digest everything, because this is a lot of information. Yes.
It's good stuff. But I have a feeling that you two kind of know what we're trying to say better than we do. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can kind of
We have
read
great
as to where we're coming from.
yeah. I think it's been very helpful. And to your point, Marilyn, if there's more time needed, that's totally understandable. Time to kind of digest and time to kind of help formulate what you want that next workshop to really look like as well. My initial thought was to kind of have some. Actually, if you go to my last slide, I have it out there. That one, yeah. Just start to introduce some draft modeling, concept, and draft report stuff in the next workshop. Because that'll be our final workshop here with
Right.
Planning Commission. The next one will be, the final one with Borough Council. So
Schedule that wisely.
Yes, we'll be in touch for that scheduling. I have something that
Yeah.
might be interesting to look at if you guys are kind of bringing in more examples from other municipalities. I'm interested to see kind of how other municipalities kind of use like overlays and whatnot. Now, I mean, I don't want to go overlay crazy because, as a planner, it's really cool to like have those things to, kind of have a secondary zoning on top of your already zoning. But for like enforcement purposes as well as just like transparency for residents. It can get pretty crazy to know what's what. So I'm kind of interested in seeing what other municipalities, how they balance that. And if you could find any examples of like really good overlays, especially because we do have a really good historic district overlay. But like kind of what are other places also making overlays for? Are they doing like a more downtown place? Like I'm interested to see what other places are doing. And then also kind of what other people are doing in regards of like, conditional uses and special exceptions and whatnot. Obviously I don't want to also make everything a conditional use and have the borough council meetings like 6 hours long, but we don't have a lot of conditional uses. We
Right.
definitely rely more on special exceptions as kind of an added like control over what the borough says, which is a layer of protection, but also can be a difficult barrier for like a mom and pop shop coming in and they can't fit, or if they need a special exception, it's like $500 to even be seen before the zoning hearing board. So kind of just seeing how other municipalities handle that might be interesting.
Yeah, noted. Sure.
We're trying to think of either Lidditz or Ecuador as overlays.
Form or something. It just sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Think of one of them does.
I think you're right. I think either Lidditz or Mannheim, one of them does use some kind of form.
There's one of them.
Yep. Yeah.
So last week, we just considered a overlay district being added, on a Brewers Quarry.
Oh, great.
They're adding a quarry overlay district that would allow for quarry accessory uses.
So that's Warwick Township.
Yeah, Warwick, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember which township it was, but yeah, we added we were considering that at the,
Interesting.
planning commission. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I learned all kinds of stuff in there.
I'm sure, yeah. Okay, did that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Helped us.
There's one.
Yeah.
Dust? Did he say he's dust?
I think she said clear as mud.
Clear
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks again. Thanks again for your patience.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you for the information.
It's helped. I think it kind of
I think
gets
it
the
is.
wheels started a little bit. So that's what we need.
Okay.
Okay.
Go back to the agenda.
Do you have anything to add, Elise?
No.
Anybody else for the good of the order, or we
Would
take?
you entertain a motion to adjourn?
Absolutely. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 9:08. We're adjourned.
Boy, this is the longest meeting we've had.
In a while. Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry, I was gonna try